We got the committee.
Got the committee? Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our Environmental Studies Research Seminar this week. Before we start, and I'm just going to introduce our committee and have the chair. You're the chair. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Have the chair introduce our candidate today. The announcement is that we have another thesis defense next week, and it's on leopard sharks. So if you like the sea and animals that live in it, please come to that. You'll enjoy it. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce actually on the line with us is Dr. J. Some of you may know Dr. Jason Douglas was with us for several years, not long ago, and he's one of the advisors on this committee. And then Dr. Russell, who I'm assuming you all know. But I want to welcome up Dr. Carolina Prado to talk about our candidate today. So welcome on. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Dustin. So I wanted to introduce to you AnaLisa Campos, who is just finishing up her work in comparing environmental literacy in 12 different schools that have STARS program. She was just telling me about how her path to a topic was really windy and how she had different kind of topics she wanted to do, and she actually did her proposal on different subjects. So don't be afraid to change your topics is the lesson here. And she actually came to this project by working on the latest report on the STARS program here at San Jose State. So this is how she got interested in this project, and here she is 1,200 surveys later, or less than 2,000 actually, right? Right under 2,000 surveys later, so very impressive. And we're excited to hear your talk.
Cool, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is AnaLisa, and today I'll be presenting my thesis on comparing levels of environmental literacy between STARS and non-STARS universities. So first, what is STARS? STARS is an acronym, and it stands for Sustainability Tracking Assessment Grading System. Oh, here it is. It was created in 2005 by ASHI, which is the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. It was created to be the first nationwide sustainability tracker in environmental education, or in higher education. And so overall, STARS is a transparent, self-reporting framework for colleges and universities to measure their sustainability performances. So after a university submits their STARS report, they're given a rank depending on how many points they receive. And the points that they receive is dependent on how closely they follow the criteria. So we'll get into the criteria later, but first I want to illustrate the table on the screen. As you can see, the more points you get, the higher rank you get. And so the highest rank that a university can receive through STARS is platinum, and then gold, silver, and then bronze. So here's platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. And then the rank all the way to the right actually is reporter. And so that's given to any university that just simply wants to keep their scores private. Doesn't mean that they were scored less than bronze. They could have either scored platinum, gold, or silver, or bronze, but for whatever reason, they just did not want to publicize their score. So the STARS criteria, it's out of 6 main sections. The first one is institutional characteristics, but this first criteria is just purely informational. It just has to do with how many acres the university sits on, or how many employees are currently employed at university, and how many students are currently in enrollment. So no actual points goes towards institutional characteristics. But the first one is academics. And so now finally, this is where universities have the opportunity to finally list all of their sustainability efforts. So first one is academics, and that's separated in curriculum and research. So for curriculum, university can get points based on how many sustainability courses are offered just throughout the whole campus, how many departments include a sustainability course in at least one of their in just one of their curriculum, and also if the university has a department specifically for sustainability or for environmental science, or a minor, that university can get points in curriculum. And then for research, that is if the faculty, or that includes the number of faculty that are currently engaged in sustainability research, or does the university offer any incentives for students to do research in sustainability? Next, out of 6, so this is the third one, is engagement. And engagement is also separated into 2 categories, one being campus and the other one being public. So for campus engagement, how does the university just get sustainability into the students' mindset? And so this takes into account how many clubs or student groups are there that are based around sustainability or focus on sustainability. Also, what else? Oh, well, this is actually a map on the sustainability website. This is SJSU's interactive sustainability map. So if a university has a sustainability website that consolidates all of the university's efforts, that gives us points. And so this is just an example of SJSU's interactive map. And so I selected all of the green buttons up there. So it's just fun. You can see where all the recycle bins are and all of the energy efficient resources and things. Oh, and especially where transportation solutions is. And what else? I should be using in my notes. Oh, and also for campus, are there any gardens, fishery programs, or farms on campus that students can learn about sustainable food systems? And so next one is public, and instead of campus, we also need to consider sustainability as a whole with the local community. So public just asks if the university is involved with any partnerships with the local community. For instance, Com University is a perfect example, which SJSU has a local partnership. And also how many students actually take place in community service. That also is in public engagement. So next is operations, and operations has to do with all of these things. So I'll just briefly go over some of these sections. So for air and climate, that just refers to if there's any policies that the university has in place to lower air pollutants or just reduce carbon emissions. For buildings, how many LEED buildings are on campus? What level are those LEED buildings? For dining services, what is the percentage of real food on campus? Real food being local, fair trade, and organic. And are there vegan and vegetarian options available? And with energy, what is the total energy consumption for all the buildings, laboratories, and other on-campus operations? And next is grounds. What types of plants, how many bioswales are on campus? I was just walking around, there's a really nice bioswale right next to the New Rec Center, which is beautiful. So that would, for our next report, give us a lot of points for that. And also, are they native? Are they drought tolerant? Are they conducive to the climate wherever the university sits on? And next is purchasing. Are all the purchases, like everything that is purchased, like cleaning products, electronics, office supplies, are those considered green? And also, are the businesses that all those are purchased from, do those businesses have green standards? And so next is transportation. How many students walk, bike, take public transportation? And also it has to do with the campus fleet as well. So like how many vehicles in our campus fleet are 100% electric or hybrid or something like that. And then waste and water. What do we do with our waste? What do we do with our water? How much of it do we conserve and how much of it do we recycle? So then the 5th out of 6 is planning and administration. And so I'll just go over a little bit about this. This is an opportunity for universities to just point out all their future plans in sustainability. Also has to do with how are underrepresented groups supported on campus, and and how many employees are actually receiving a sustainable compensation, meaning a living wage. And innovation. So innovation, I'll just have these are 2 examples that SJSU's last report had on it. So we had the Green Ninja Project, which gave us a lot of points, and then the Com University's City of San Jose illegal dumping collaboration also gave us some points too. So there is a lot more on STARS criteria, so if anyone is interested, because I only went over a fraction, feel free to visit stars.ashi.org. So next is, what is environmental literacy? And here's a quote by Charles Roth. But mainly environmental literacy is just anyone who is A, concerned about the environment, And not only that, but just understands what's going on right now, understands the current environmental threat, and also takes proper action to mitigate what their behavior actually does or has an impact on the environment. So there are some theories, theoretical frameworks, that may explain a relationship between stars, between a stars-rated school and environmental literacy and students. So the first one being the theory of transactionalism, which has to do with, the theory suggests that human behavior and knowledge is attributed to the environment through a concept of interactions and transactions. So we as humans will shape our environment just as our environment will shape us. So if students walk through their campus by physically walking through their campus and taking classes, joining clubs, there is a transaction of information that's happening between their campus experiences and themselves. And then the next one is experiential learning theory. And this theory has to do, or it suggests that humans there's a greater probability that humans will continue doing behaviors if those behaviors were positive and reoccurring experiences. So if a student has a positive experience tending to a garden, or taking public transportation, or eating a plant-based food diet, then the chances of those behaviors continuing is increased. And then next is similar to the last theory, but the environmental affordance theory suggests that, well, humans will partake in actions and behaviors that are made available to them. So, for instance, SJSU makes available free transportation, so then the likelihood of students actually taking free public transportation, or since it's made available that there are plenty of sustainability courses to take, then students then will have the opportunity to take those courses. And then thus learn something from those courses, and then maybe that behavior will continue on. So there are many studies, here they are, have broken down environmental literacy into three main dimensions. The first one being attitude towards the environment, environmental behavior, and environmental knowledge. So many of these studies have sort of proven or agree that a positive attitude towards the environment coupled with knowledge, or just knowledge about ecological principles, is then a predictor for environmental behavior. So doing a deep dive on all of these dimensions, first we have attitude towards the environment. And to explain attitudes towards the environment, I'm just going to talk about 3 studies done in the past that have measured attitude. And so the first one is the IAT, which is also the implicit associations test. The next one is inclusion of nature in the self. And then the next one is probably the most popular and most recent, not the most recent, but very most popular, is connectedness to nature scale, the CNS. And so you can see that mainly attitude is measured by how closely a person feels connected to nature or to the environment. So for the first one, they use a word association where participants are asked to say if me or not me feels closely with words from the natural environment, like animals and trees and flowers, versus words associated with the built environment, like car, city, buildings, things like that. And so with the second one, I am concerned about environmental problems because of the consequences for blank. So depending on their answer, the researchers were able to see if, for instance, if they said myself or me, that would in turn prove that that participant was more concerned with egotistical concerns rather than if they had said like nature or the environment or future species or things like that, then that would in turn kind of predict that they're more on the biospheric concerns. And so of course with connected to nature scale, an example is I often feel a kinship with animals and plants. And so another example for that is I often feel part of the web of life. And so with this, they were asked to choose between strongly agree and strongly disagree. And so that is through a 5-point type Likert scale, which is nice because it will measure in a degree of favorability. And let's see. So the next one is environmental behavior, and it's kind of straightforward. Environmental behavior is just any action made towards to ensure a healthy ecosystem, such as turning off the lights as you walk out of a room, or doing your best to support candidates who share concern with environmental issues, things like that. So, hold on. So the first scale is ecology scale, and these are just examples of other measures, other studies done in the past that have been used to measure behavior. And so this one is I have switched products for ecological reasons, where participants were just asked to pick between true or false if that strongly worded statement applied to them. And this is a little bit of the same, the GEB. And again, another example is I use phosphate-free laundry detergent, where participants were asked, instead of true or false, they were asked to choose between yes and no. And then the Wisconsin High School Student Environmental Literacy Survey, I have some other examples. So for example, this one was geared towards high school students that actually measured all of the three, attitude, behavior, and knowledge. But this is a little different because, like the connectedness to nature scale, this one also uses the Likert type scale. If it's for behavior, then let's say the answer, the item is I turn off water while brushing my teeth, then you would normally answer between almost always to never. So next is environmental knowledge, and I want to also showcase the Wisconsin Environmental Literacy Survey, because there was a researcher by the name of Perry who broke down environmental knowledge as having knowledge in these 4 concepts. So there is ecological principles, so it's not really, it's not only understanding the human and nature relationship, but it's also understanding the importance of all species and how they're related. And also action strategies. The next one is understanding environmental problems. So it's just being able to recognize an environmental threat when you see one, and also being able to decipher between an issue and a non-issue. The next one is understanding skills for creating and evaluating and implementing an action plan, which is really just being able to make a feasible way to actually mitigate those environmental issues with your actions. So my problem statement is the STARS survey provided by ASHI does not include the environmental literacy of its student body. So it is important to develop an understanding as to whether the initiatives that STARS and non-STARS rated universities are integrating have an impact on besides their immediate ecological footprint. So I have 2 research objectives. The first one is to understand the relationship between environmental literacy of the college students and between university STARS scores. And the second one is to analyze the extent of all the 3 dimensions of environmental literacy, being attitude, behavior, and knowledge. So I have 2 research questions, but then the first one is separated into 2 questions. So the overarching one is, what is the relationship between university STARS rating and EL? EL is, I'm going to abbreviate that to environmental literacy. And so that is broken down into 2 other questions. The first one being, how does environmental literacy differ between STARS and non-STARS rated schools? And then the second one is, how does student EL, or what is the extent of the relationship between all of the STARS ranks? So all the STARS ranks being platinum, silver, gold, and bronze. And last but not least, again, what is the extent between all of the 3 dimensions of environmental literacy? So for my methods, I sent out a survey to both undergraduates and graduate students. But I did exclude some part of the population. I excluded freshmen and first-year graduate students from a different undergraduate school. I'll get I'll get to that a little bit later as to why I did that. So 12 study sites, 12 schools were sent the survey, and I have 1 platinum school, 3 gold schools, 4 silver, 1 bronze, and 3 non-rated schools that were studied. So here is a map of all of the different schools. They were all in California, as you can see. So I have 1 platinum, which is Stanford University, because at the time of writing the proposal, getting RIB approval, Stanford was the only school at the time rated platinum. So therefore, very important to have them study. And luckily they said, yes, that's okay, you can study your students. And next we have San Jose State, CSUN, Riverside, and then also right here we have 4 silver schools and only 1 bronze, and I meant to have 3 silver schools, 3 gold, because there was a lot from gold and silver to choose from, and of course there was plenty of non-rated schools. I only wanted to study 3 at a time though. So at the time of when I was writing the proposal, only Soka and Sonoma were the only schools rated bronze, but then as I was deploying my surveys, wanting to get, deploying the email that listed, that provided the survey link, when Soka got back to me, all their faculty had told me that they had just turned in a STARS report, and so they were recently bronze, and so when they had just turned it in, they were expecting to receive a silver rating, which was so recent that the STARS website had yet to be updated. So that's why I only have 1 bronze, and so when they had told me that, so they let me know they want their school to be considered silver because it will be silver within the next month, so that's why I have 4 silver schools and only 1 bronze. So the survey that I used was an adaptation of the Wisconsin High School Student Environmental Literacy. So when it was created, later that year, another researcher by the name of Green, the original one was 90 questions long, which was a little long for my use. And so later that same year, a researcher named Green decided to use the survey for her own research, but she wanted to modify it to better suit adults. And so now we have the same survey, but instead of catering to high school students, now we have adults. And then in 2000, another researcher by the name of Kibber used the same survey, well, Green's adaptation, because she also wanted to survey adults, but she also narrowed down the questions to 45 questions with 15 questions each for attitude, behavior, and knowledge. So with my survey, I narrowed down Kibbert's already narrowed down questions, so I chose 5 questions out of her 15 questions that she used for attitude, behavior, and knowledge. So then I used 5 questions for each dimension, and then 5 other questions were for demographics, and I studied class standing. I asked them for their class standing and whether if they were a sophomore to a grad student, their age and major, and gender. So quantification of data. So in my survey, I had 3 sections: attitude, behavior, and knowledge. So for attitude and behavior, those were measured by a 5-point Likert type scale, meaning, so that would be from strongly disagree to strongly agree versus always never to never. And then knowledge was a multiple choice question out of only 4 options. And then so each section was out of 20 points. So the highest score you can get for the overall survey was 60 points, and then the lowest score, of course, you can get for each section and the overall score was 0 points. And so the way that it was quantified was that for attitude and behavior, the most positive, most favorable answer towards the environment was given a score of 4 points, and of course, the least positive was given a score of 0. And so the inside options were given points 3 to 1, depending on the implied favorability to the environment. So if that was a little confusing, I'm going to go over an example of each of the questions and explain exactly how it was quantified. So this is an attitude question, an actual question that I used in my survey. The example is, I think most of the concern about the environment, about environmental problems has been exaggerated. So if you were to say, yeah, it's totally been exaggerated, you would get 0 points because that is representative of like a very not very positive feeling towards the environment. And so, of course, the most positive environmental answer is strongly disagree, gets 4 points, and then of course the points decrease from there. So here's an example of a behavior question, and the question is, I turn off lights and appliances when they are not being used to conserve electricity. So the most positive environmental answer gets 4 points, almost always, and then it goes down from there to 0 points if you say never. And then the last but not least is a knowledge item, and so this is out of multiple choice. And so the question is, which of the following contributes to air pollution at the surface of the Earth and acts as a shield against ultraviolet rays in upper atmosphere? So the correct answer is ozone, and so that answer gets 4 points, and then every single other answer only gets gets 0 points. So data collection. I sent an email to the faculty and staff of all of the listed universities that you saw and inside the email it included the purpose of the survey. It also confirmed the students' confidentiality, and also, of course, it provided a link to the survey. So with that, faculty either sent the link directly to their students, just forwarded my email, or they created their own little message towards them. Or also, since I was requesting their surveys in the middle of finals, so also some of the professors just wrote the link on the whiteboard so students can finish it after, so students can maybe complete the survey if they wanted to after their final. And so all of the departments and our majors were randomly selected, as well as the professors. So first, the department of each school was randomly selected using being assigned a random number, and then they were randomly selected. And then also the professors included were also randomly selected. So if you saw the list of schools, SJSU, that was chosen, and CSUN, that was also chosen because that's my alma mater, and I was just simply curious about those schools. But within that, I also needed to randomize how the data would be collected, so therefore, even though I chose some of the schools, SJSU and CSUN, all the other ones were mostly done randomly. Departments and professors were randomly selected to be studied. And then also, some schools needed outside research IRB approval, so I think San Marcos just needed some confirmation from me before I actually deployed my emails and got research from them. I believe Cal Poly Pomona also needed IRB approval, and maybe another school, but most of them actually, they were less regulated, and a researcher was just able to start deploying surveys and getting the surveys back from their students. So next is data analysis. I used SPSS version 25 to run all of my stats. Before I actually ran any of them with tests, I tested them for their normality, and it turned out none of the data was normal, and so I had to use non-parametric data analyses to actually run all the tests. So here they are. The Mann-Whitney use test is the non-parametric version of the t-test, which I use to study any differences between only two variables. And then the Kruskal-Wallis test is the non-parametric form of an ANOVA, so that was used to run tests between multiple variables. And then I did Spearman's coefficient correlations to analyze the relationship between the EL subsections as well as demographics and things like that. So results. I had collected about just under 2,000 valid responses. Responses were considered invalid if they were done by a freshman, and if they were done by a first-year graduate student from a different undergraduate school, And what else? Oh, and then if a student just failed to answer one question, those were also thrown out. And so that probably threw out maybe 500 to 600 surveys. And so I got 133 bronze, of course a lot of silver schools. So N equals, that's the sum of all of the surveys completed from those different ranks. And then of course it was also a little bit less for platinum since Stanford University was the only school rated as platinum. And then of course Sonoma was the only school rated in bronze. And then we had 4 schools going in silver and 3 in gold and 3 in non-stars rated. So about like the same amount of points for there. So my first question was how does environmental literacy differ amongst stars rated schools and non-stars rated schools? So if you can see, I separated the data into environmental attitude, behavior, and environmental knowledge. And then here you have the medium amount of score for not stars rated and yes stars rated. And so yeah, you can see that actually stars rated colleges did score a little bit higher, but even if they did, if you focus your eyes on the p-value, none of this is significant because it's significant when the p-value is less than 0.05. And so yeah, so it's insignificant, or it's not significant. There's no significant difference. My next overall research question was how does environmental literacy differ amongst ranks? So now we're only testing the difference between platinum, silver, gold, and bronze. And so again, it's separated. And then here, like I said, significant is only if it's less than 0.05. And so all of this is higher than 0.05. So with this, it's statistically no difference, and therefore proves that environmental literacy remains a level among college students, even depending if they come from schools that are higher ranked than others. And so this is a fun chart, just so you can see or give like a bird's eye view of the same question, but also how non-rated schools fared against the rated schools. So here here is bronze, silver, gold, platinum, non-rated. There we go. So actually over here, platinum did really well, but as you can see from the other from the significance level, this relationship is still not very significant. So according to the data, scores are just kind of still level. So my third and last research question was about what is the extent of the relationship between the EL dimensions being attitude, behavior, knowledge. And so this is a Spearman's correlation table. And so right here we actually have this is the same, and it, yeah, so these are all like all the